So welcome to this special meeting of the Washtenaw County Democratic Party, also sponsored by the Ann Arbor Dems, with a series of school board trustee candidate panels we've got Lincoln, Saline, Chelsea, and perhaps Dexter. The Dexter School Board is actually meeting tonight, so it's a question of whether we're going to finish early enough so they can participate. I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. Washtenaw County occupies the ancestral traditional lands of the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Ojibwa, and Potawatomi. The Washtenaw County Democratic Party recognizes historic Indigenous communities in Michigan and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. Washtenaw County occupies lands ceded in the 1807 Treaty of Detroit. We acknowledge Indigenous history and experience. Thank you. I'd like to now turn it. I see I have a question from an attendee, so let me see. That would be Chris Savage. Chris Savage is our chair, and therefore I will, of course, permit him to talk. Chris?
Hi, I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank everybody for participating. And I just want to point out that one of the candidates for the Dexter School Board posted on social media that we were paying $500 cash contribution, or that two partisan political groups were paying cash contributions or exchanging endorsements for participation. I just want to make it clear that the Washtenaw County Dems is not doing that. We do not pay people to come to these forums. We actually encourage them to participate. We're not paying anybody to participate. So I just want to make that very, very clear. I'm not sure, because this person did not indicate who those partisan groups were. It's easy for people to say that, it was us because we are one of the biggest partisan groups in the county. But I just want to make it very clear that we are not paying people to be here tonight. Thank you.
That is all correct, to my knowledge. So I would like to now turn the panel over to Susan Baskett, who will be the moderator for the first panel, Lincoln School District. The basic rules are each candidate will have 2 minutes for a personal statement, and then 2 minutes to answer each question. And I will hold up this yellow sign when there are 30 seconds left, and this red sign which indicates time is up. I have to say, we experimented with all sorts of means of communication of this information at our last meeting and discovered by scientific methods that this is the best. So I hope that this meeting doesn't disprove that. I would like to ask all those individuals who are not on this panel to turn their videos off and to also be muted. Those who are on the panel, feel free to keep your microphone on for the entire time. Otherwise, we'll always be forgetting to turn it on, in my experience. So that we haven't had a problem with that for such a small panel. Susan Baskett, who is a trustee of the Ann Arbor School Board, so she's very familiar with school board issues, will be the moderator for this panel. And I thank her very much for undertaking this. Susan, it's yours.
Thank you, Eli, and thank you to my fellow Dems for hosting a series of events about school boards. As you know, school board races are very in the news, so to speak. So again, I welcome the opportunity to be here. As Eli said, I am Susan Baskett. I am currently on the board for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. And yes, I am running for re-election, full disclosure. But I serve many hats with the Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor Democratic Party. For the Washtenaw County, I am co-chair along with my wonderful co-chair, Ray Ann Weymouth, co-chair of the Administrative Affairs Committee. Also, Eli has allowed me to join as an ad hoc member of the Programs Committee to work on this particular project. And again, candidate for re-election for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. Due to a bout with COVID, I volunteered to moderate this session tonight. I have no vested interest. I cannot vote for either candidate. And I'm not getting paid, so full disclosure, to be here. But it is my honor to be part of the outreach for the Washtenaw County Democratic Party. We've been making every effort to reach deep into our county to learn other parts beyond Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. So I'm very pleased to be here with incumbent school board member Jason Moore and challenger Stacy Kind. Lincoln School District is not in Lincoln, Michigan, but instead in Augusta Township. It is a relatively small district, about 3,600 students, over 6 schools. But before I go too deep into Lincoln, I'm going to let these fine people introduce themselves and tell us about their wonderful school district. So, Mr. Moore, if you would please start with your personal statement, tell us more about yourself and why are you running for re-election, please?
Yes, good evening. As mentioned, my name is Jason D. Moore. I am running for a 6-year term at Lincoln Consolidated School District as a trustee. I grew up in the Ann Arbor area. I went to school down south in Atlanta at Morehouse, and then I worked there for a while before moving to Houston and then Kansas City. I've since come back and worked here for a little bit before starting my own business as a digital content provider. The main reason I am running is because last year in June or end of May in 2021, I was nominated as a special appointee for the school board. And I really got a chance to get my hands in there and see the work that needed to be done. The most important thing I feel is my willingness to serve. As I said, I'm running for a 6-year term. That will obviously require sacrifice and commitment to serve the schools and the surrounding community. I've volunteered with the Bishop and model schools in the past, pre-COVID restrictions, and I can just see I see the importance of being available. And by available, I mean offering a helping hand to the wonderful staff at Lincoln, Bishop in particular. The staff, they already do so much. So this is just my chance to try and give as much help and resources that I can. I also see the importance of the diversity. At the elementary levels, there's not too many males. So just being present there lets people see that, hey, you know what? It's everybody's responsibility to come and help out.
Thank you. Ms. Kind, if you would do the same, please.
Hello, my name is Stacy Kind. I'm running for Lincoln Consolidated School Board 2022. I'm running for the 6-year term. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My son made it through kindergarten at Childs Elementary before I pulled him out to homeschool him during the COVID pandemic. I have all the time in the world to put my focus towards the school. I was an active volunteer at Childs. I was in there every week. I helped the little ones get dressed, get undressed before school, hang up all their lockers, backpacks, help them get dressed to leave. I love being a part of the school. It was my hopes to be a substitute teacher when my youngest went to kindergarten, which would be this year, but we are still currently homeschooling. I do not see it fit to put them into school until there's some major changes happening within the school, mainly with what was happening during COVID and the educational plans that are being put into place. My kids will not be put in school until I see that things run a little more smoothly, and I want to be a huge part of that. I don't mind giving a sacrifice for all the kids. I have the best interest for the kids, and I've always been there for the kids. So any questions?
Well, questions will come later. I promise.
Oh, okay.
They're about
I lead a pretty boring life. You know, I'm around. I'm always available, like I said. And I'd love to get my kids back into the school, but I can't do that until I see it fit.
Thank you. So just to clarify, you are both running for 6-year terms.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you are competitors. Okay. And then there are other candidates. I'm sorry, we should have mentioned that earlier. There are other candidates for this particular race. Unfortunately, we did not realize that they are meeting as a school board tonight. So unfortunately, well, you know, they were all informed and we're very supportive of Mr. Moore missing out on the meeting tonight to join us. And Ms. Kind, we did get a late response to you. So I apologize that we didn't get the chance to brief beforehand. So you've told us a little bit about yourselves. You told us a little bit about why you're running, and we've clarified that you are both running for the 6-year term. What makes Lincoln special? And Ms. Kind, I'm going to start with you first, please.
Honestly, what makes Lincoln special is the teachers. I loved the teachers at Child Elementary. They're all amazing. I haven't ran across very many that I didn't think had the best interest for the children. Unfortunately, with how things have been going during COVID, I know that our numbers have been going down, and I don't like to see that happen. I like the kids to stay in school. I'd love for my kids to be a part of the school. Lincoln is a very special place, though. There's a lot of community. I can always see people working as teams in the fields. When I drive by, I do believe that they do put the children first, the teachers. I don't know much about the administration. So that's a little bit that I would like to get into.
Mr. Moore, please. Same question. What makes Lincoln special?
First and foremost, we are up and coming. We have people in leadership positions who are thinking of how to make Lincoln just a better place and where students want to be, where parents want to be their students. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. But we're taking strides to get there. We're growing technology-wise, academically, socially, including sporting complex, musical and theatrical opportunities, and other extracurricular activities. But most importantly, as Ms. Kind mentioned, the staff, the board, the teachers, the stakeholders, they are committed to the growth of the whole child, every child, meeting their academic needs, paying attention to their social and emotional well-being, and willingness to listen and learn from the community and work to implement where possible based off the community's feedback. So we are definitely trying, and we're not just going to stop when we reach one goal. We want to continue to grow.
Awesome. Ms. Kind, you talked a little bit about needing major changes in this coming year. Could you talk about the challenges that you see that Lincoln Consolidated Schools will be facing, and how you in particular will be able to address some of those challenges, please?
Yes, ma'am. I personally would love to see the kids kept in school. I think that we know COVID isn't dangerous anymore. It's not dangerous, especially to the children. What's dangerous is keeping them out of school, keeping them in potentially a dangerous environment at home. School is supposed to be a safe place. It's supposed to be your first place of reporting problems. And that goes along with the teacher realizing those things. And when we keep them out of school, you don't see those things. You don't know that kids are jumping on the computer every day. I want to make sure these kids stay in school, and I want to make sure that they're not masking, because I want you guys to understand that to a little kid, that is very terrifying not to be able to read people's faces. And it's more unsanitary to have a mask on your face than it is to be breathing the air that everybody's breathing. Kids touch that thing a million times a day. So I want to see kids back to normal. I think we're done with COVID.
And again, Eli, you are the timing.
So I can tell you, everyone has been very careful about the timing. They're all under 2 minutes. So
Perfect.
for you, if you'd reached 2 minutes, you would have seen that yellow marker and then the red marker. So,
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Mr. Moore, same question. What are the challenges you see, and what exactly? How can you help address some of those challenges?
I believe transparency and communication continues to be a point of major contention. And it's not that we don't communicate, but just the efficiency in which it happens and who it goes to first will always be a problem, but it has been a continued problem for the longest. So we're making strides this year to improve on that. But let's be honest, the work is never truly finished. The pandemic helped create a very diverse atmosphere everywhere. People had strong opinions on a lot of things. So being able to kind of bring that back together and let people know that at the end of the day, it is about the children and doing what's best for them to keep them healthy and happy and learning and growing. The development is key. So we really want to try and push that forward.
So, Mr. Moore, you are on the board performance committee. Could you please explain what that is and what are your reflections, revelations of how the board performed this past year?
Okay. So the board performance committee looks at the outcome of the district's goals, procedures, and initiatives or other items assigned by the board's executive committee, and measure their performance based on verifiable data, verifiable, measurable data, excuse me. Based off the results, the committee will make recommendations to the entire board to consider whether or not changes need to be made. Everything from, our recycling policy all the way up to disciplinary actions and, looking at the numbers and trying to make sure that we are fair and equitable throughout. The biggest challenge in my reflection on this past year, because we look at past numbers, generally within the past 2-3 years, all the numbers have been skewed based on the fact of hybrid learning or virtual learning or in-school learning that was paused and had to go back to virtual learning. So it was really difficult to get a solid foundation on what's taken place over the last couple of years in order to make solid recommendations. So that's been the biggest challenge that we've faced.
So I'm going to ask the question again in terms of board performance, the board itself. But Mr. Moore, let me pause you there and let me go to Ms. Kind. Ms. Kind, you are wanting to join this board for a reason. And I was told a long time ago, for someone much smarter who had done this job much longer, people get involved because they're angry about something. Is that about your reason? Is it about board performance this past year?
Yes, ma'am. It wasn't the past year. I stayed out of it the past year, but I am a little upset with how the board has been handling things. And I am on a community forum understanding that they are not taking bullying seriously. There was, I don't know if I'm allowed to give specific examples, and I won't unless you tell me, but from what my understanding, that bullying is not being taken care of, namely by the superintendent. He's not getting back to the parents. He's not calling them. They're sending them messages. He's not calling them. I can't speak for the rest of the board. I know that the previous vice president and president and superintendent had a very difficult time reaching back to me. I don't think communication is clear. I have all the time in the world to get back to anybody that has any questions, and I am transparent. I don't beat around the bush. And like you said, yes, you are right. I am upset with the current board.
So, Mr. Moore, how would you respond to Ms. Kind? And yeah, let me just ask that.
Well, to be perfectly honest, as I said before, transparency and communication continues to be a issue that we are working to fix. Is it perfect? By no means, but that's something that we're trying to do. In asking, and to go back to board performance committee, you asked for the challenges and what the actual committee does. The name may sound a little bit misleading because we're looking at disciplinary actions of in the school and whatnot. And that's not necessarily how the board is performing, if that makes sense. But in response to Ms. Kind, her being upset, first, let me apologize because I'm a nice guy. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't like for anybody to be upset, but we can only fix a problem by going forward. And if there are particular issues, there's something that, we can work on and talk through. And even up till the election or December 31st or whenever, let's make contact, let's follow up and try and resolve any issues that you may have. I'm willing to reach out. I'm transparent and free. My life's an open book at times. So
Thank you. In the past 2 years with the pandemic, it's brought a lot of upset people to the forefront, a lot of oppositional groups, and yet we've had very supportive groups as well, our parents especially. Eli is going to put a list of groups to the screen. And Ms. Kind, can you tell us, please, have you been a part of any of these groups? Do you plan on soliciting their support?
No, ma'am, I am not a part of any of those groups. I actually
Thank
never
you.
even heard of any of those besides for Liberty.
Okay. Mr. Moore, are you a part of any of these groups? Have you received support or plan to receive support from any of these groups?
that's negative for all the above.
All right, thank you so much. Folks, you tell us what makes you stand out from other candidates. And Mr. Moore, let's start with you.
I believe my willingness to work, my willingness to serve and help and be a resource helps me be motivated to want to help out the community, to want to help out the school. As a weekly volunteer in the school system, it's very important that the children see that, you know, it's, as I mentioned before, it's everybody's responsibility to come and help out their school, their community especially that they live in. I have 2 boys in the school system right now. One's going to be an incoming kindergartner and one's going to the middle school for the first time. So it's important that they see me in a positive light, and I don't want to continue to be part of the problem, but I want to be part of the solution. So I've always been raised and to believe that at some point in time, there's always going to be somebody faster than you, taller than you, more talented than you, but that doesn't have to mean they can outwork you. So my goal is always just to outwork and perform to the top of my ability and give kids the best opportunity to be the best version of themselves.
Mr. Moore. Ms. Kind, how do you stand out from the other candidates?
You know, I actually have to agree with Mr. Moore. I think being present is the first and foremost important thing. For my year being there, I have never seen an administrative person in the buildings. I've never seen anybody come read a book to us. I've never seen their faces until I went to the school board meeting. I think being present and maybe even delegating certain board members to make it a point to circle around in the school, see what's going on, you know, quietly sit in the back of school, make sure things are flowing nicely, in which I know that Child's Elementary did not have a problem with. They were excellent teachers, all of them. I had a very good rapport with all of them, but I would have to say presence. Presence is key. We need more presence. We need people that are willing to walk through the buildings, walk around the buildings, outside, inside, go to events. We need those people.
But Ms. Kind, again, my question is, what makes you stand out from other candidates?
What makes me stand out from other candidates is I'm a firecracker. I am very transparent. I tell the truth. I don't hold back. I say what needs to be said.
Thank you. Eli, I'm just being mindful of our time. We have 5 more minutes.
You have 5 more minutes. I'd say one more round of questions,
right.
And a 1-minute final statement.
Thank you so much. All right. So folks, you're relatively new to the school board business, so to speak. But as a veteran, I often have heard this question. So I'm going to pose it to you to, answer as best as you can, but think about it as you go on the campaign trail. Is it time to regionalize public school districts? And before you answer that, let me just point of fact, there are 891 school districts in Michigan versus 407 in Indiana. I'm from a big school district, you're from a smaller school district. Is it time to regionalize? And Mr. Moore, if you would start that, please.
So thinking on that question, it's very, it's there's a lot to unpack. So obviously, with time constraints, I will not unpack it at the time. But I'm not so necessarily sure that it is time to regionalize the school districts, simply because not all schools have things that will attract everybody. Now, obviously, I'm a big believer in going to the neighborhood school. My kids do not participate in school of choice, but that doesn't mean that it's not important for some other kids that might want to focus on, culinary skills or physics or some other school, a science program that might have another school district that offers it. So I say that very cautiously, knowing that it's not the full answer, but that is still something to consider and think about before you relegate somebody to having to go to a school that may not best suit them and their future goals.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kind.
Now I have a question. What do you mean by regionalize the schools? What do you mean by that? Do you mean like put them together, a school of choice, or
Consolidate.
consolidate?
School districts. Yes.
No, I don't think that's a good idea. I think keeping it small is probably best. I think we're overmanaged. I understand how that could be useful with the teacher decline, with the educator decline. I understand how that can be useful, but then I imagine you'd be putting extra students, more students in a classroom for a teacher than there already is, if what would be my assumption. That's what I'm imagining. I don't know if that sounds correct to you, or if that's what you're asking, but I don't think that's a good idea. We do have school of choice. If people want to come here, they could come here. If people don't want to go there, they can go somewhere else. So I don't know if that's like school of choice is what you mean by regionalize, or.
No, but you answered the question thoroughly. So thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
All right. So as Eli mentioned, that this is the set time for closing statements. And so since Mr. Moore, you went first last time, we will allow Ms. Kind of the courtesy. So Ms. Kind, please tell us whatever you want us to know in your closing statement, please.
Hello, I'm Stacy Kind. I'm running for Lincoln Consolidated School District. I am present, will be present, and I'm looking to serve you guys the best I can. I want to be there. I want to be present in the school district. I want to voice into these kids' education, get our numbers up. I want to see our teachers happy. I want to see less people leaving, and I want to be a part of making that all happen. And I'm really excited. I love education, always have, always will. And I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of something great to serve the educators and the students.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Again, at the end of the day, it's all about helping people, in particular, our wonderful staff and the students, and make sure they have the opportunity and resources to be the best version of themselves. I want to help them reach their full potential. I've been able to be in the schools, to my assigned school, which is model preschool, and work in Bishop. And I think it's important that we are available and we are helping and giving our all to these children because they deserve it. I'm a hard worker. I'm genuine and authentic because, be perfectly honest, I don't know any other way to be. So let's go to work. Let's do it.
Thank you. Thank you both for the opportunity of talking with me today and obviously allowing the wider audience to learn more about you. It's been a pleasure. Good luck to you both. If there's anything I can do, you know how to reach me. So thank you. And thank you to Washtenaw County Dems and Eli for being that ever support arm of me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just typing out a brief chat here, message. So I want to thank Susan Baskett for taking the time to serve as moderator. Really appreciate that. And I should mention, Susan was the one who had the idea that we should reach out beyond the Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. There's more in Washtenaw County than these two districts. We're well aware. So I'm grateful to her for suggesting this. And I'm glad that we were able to put this together. And next time when we do it, we'll be even better, I hope, because we'll be more prepared. You learn from your experience. I want to thank Stacy Kind and Jason Moore for taking time to speak to us, and because this will be on video, to a larger audience. It's a great self-sacrifice to put yourself up as a candidate, and I respect you both for doing that. So thank you. I'll now turn the meeting over to Jennifer Fairfield, who will moderate the panel for Saline. So if the Saline candidates could please turn on their videos and turn on their mics. Jennifer, you may start the meeting.
Thanks, Eli. Good evening, everybody. As in the prior meeting, if anyone who is not participating in this part of it, if you would stop your video so that we aren't distracted by others who aren't part of this, I appreciate it. So good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Fairfield. I am the chair of the Western Washtenaw Democrats. Happy to be here tonight. As Susan mentioned in her opening, and I think we all know, the running as a school board member right now, I think is taking on a lot. Being a school board member has become very contentious. So I have to say my hat is off to all of you for being willing to do this. I have a great deal of respect for your willingness for this. So tonight we're going to start with the candidates for Saline School Board. And if you see me looking off to the side a little bit, it's because I'm reading my questions for you guys. So it's please forgive me for that, because my memory these days is not good enough to try to do this from memory. So we are going to start tonight with Saline. We have Michael McVey, who is running for one of 3 seats for a 6-year term on the Saline School Board. And I'm sorry, 4-year? Four. Michael, go ahead and say that.
I'm sorry, 2 seats, 4-year term.
Okay, then the county has that information wrong. Okay, I'm going to go with what he said. We also have Lauren Gold, who's running for 1 seat to fill a partial term. Am I correct on that one, Lauren? Okay. So I'm going to start with some questions that I have for both of you, and we'll start with Lauren and then go to Michael, and then the next question we'll start with Michael and go to Lauren. I understand you guys are running for different seats, so you're not exactly competing against each other, but you are running for.
Jennifer,
yes, go ahead.
You want to give them maybe 2 minutes for an opening statement?
I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. That was in my notes and I totally ignored it. So yes, so starting then with Lauren, if you would introduce yourself and explain why you are running for school board in Saline.
Sure. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Dr. Lauren Gold. I'm a mom of 3 Saline students, I guess 2 now. One is a recent graduate, and I have 2 kids still in Saline schools. I'm a practicing pediatrician in Ann Arbor, and I've been a volunteer in the schools as well. I'm running because I am grateful to the wonderful education my kids and the kids of this community have had the opportunity to receive in Saline area schools. Our district has amazing opportunities for academic growth, emotional growth, athletic growth for our children. And I know that doesn't come without a lot of work and support from, first and foremost, the teachers and the other professionals, but also the community of parents and families and neighbors. And I want to represent all those interests because there's a lot more about a school than just the bricks and mortar. It's an entire community educating our next generation. And as a pediatrician, I am acutely aware of many of the challenges that our students face, and I want to be part of solutions, and I think I can be.
Thank you, Lauren. And Michael.
Well, first of all, nice meeting you, Lauren. I haven't done that yet. And thank you very much to the Washtenaw Dems, Western Washtenaw Dems, for arranging this forum. My name is Dr. Michael McVey, and I'm seeking re-election to the Saline Area Schools Board of Education. Over the last 6 years, it's been my honor to serve as both secretary and the last 2 years as vice president. But let me start by saying that I am deeply involved in education. I began my career as a K-12 special education and high school English teacher. And 20 years after that, I moved into higher ed and teacher preparation. So presently, I'm a professor in the teacher education department at Eastern Michigan University. And my field is educational technology, and specifically effective online teaching, which has become a little valuable recently. My daughter, by the way, graduated from Saline area schools in 2013. And since I was remarried a few years back, I've added 2 more daughters to the household. And love them all, of course. And it was through their experiences that I learned what a remarkable district Saline was or is. So since my election, I have represented the board at all manner of student showcases, performances, competitions, community listening sessions, legislative coffees, and even a city council meeting or two. And those experiences showed me just how vital it is that the vitality our schools bring to the community. During my 6-year term, I've helped to draft new policies to increase protections for our most vulnerable and sometimes victimized students. I've helped to hire a new superintendent, and I've advocated, thank you, for increased funding at both the state and the federal level. And I worked to move our community DEI efforts into a standing permanent committee. I hope to talk about that a bit later. We've had challenges and opportunities over the last few years, and I believe I've brought a calm and professional demeanor to my work on the board as our district sought to deal with those in a humane and safe manner. So I'm looking forward to your questions, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So since we had Lauren go first with the introductions, we'll go back to you, Michael, for the first question. And I've sort of got a list here, so I'm going to pick at random what questions I'm asking for both of the, or all 3 potentially of the boards that candidates that we're talking to. So I think first question, actually, Michael, you started to talk about it. I know that Saline has had some issues along the lines of diversity. So how will you commit to starting or moving forward diversity, equity, and inclusion work in your district?
Well, great. Well, I really appreciate that question. I'd like to start by saying it's less of a question of what I will do, but what I have done in the last few years. Of course, there's still much more to go. So a couple of years into my 6-year term, we had a well-publicized racial incident involving some of our students, and our community was in an uproar, and justifiably so. We'd been hearing about incidents here and there across our district, and I was feeling that we were having trouble making the district take them as seriously as the community was asking us to. Well, we marched in town. We had many listening sessions, and one issue and a few that seemed to give us the traction we needed was to develop a DEI committee that was community driven. So my role as a board member has been to encourage the policy committee to make the DEI committee a standing committee. It was just as important as policy and finance. We now have a DEI committee that's built into our policies that we must run. So the efforts that we do in our DEI work won't fade away. Also, I've been really grateful for the idea that came from that committee to create the position of a director of culturally responsive instruction, equity, and inclusion. Sorry, director of, it's a tricky one, the director of culturally responsive instruction, equity, and inclusion. And that person has now been hired, Dr. Shannon Washington. She's at the director level. And I am really looking forward to hearing what the DEI committees, the DEI AC, have to say and share with us moving forward toward a more equitable future for the district.
Okay, thank you very much. 2 things before we move on to Lauren. One, Eli, would you remind both of the candidates what the different color cards mean? I forgot to do that.
So the yellow card appears when there's 30 seconds left. The red card appears when your time is up. So you have 90 seconds. You have 90 seconds until the yellow card appears, and then 30 more seconds until the red card appears.
Just wanted to make sure you, both of you were aware of that.
And we had that's how we do it in our board meetings. So same color, same timing. Yeah.
We had a question to the panelists that I want to make sure that I address before we move on to Lauren. Someone asked what DEI means, and that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, that is what we're talking about. So Lauren, let's move on to you. The same question, how will you commit to starting or moving forward diversity, equity, and inclusivity work in your district?
Yeah, so I'd like to thank Dr. McVey for his efforts in this really important task. I was at some of those school board meetings and certainly watching very closely as a parent and a community member. Helping to promote a learning environment that celebrates diversity, promotes equity, and feels inclusive to students, staff, and teachers is extremely important to me as a potential trustee. Nearly half of U.S. adolescents in 2019 identified as a racial or ethnic minority. And there continue to be large disparities by race and ethnicity across a number of different domains and outcomes, including in education and healthcare, which I'm acutely aware of. So it is really incumbent upon Saline area schools to partner with families and the community and to be listening, especially to members of these groups in our community in working to eliminate these disparities. It's not hyperbole to say that our future depends on making things more equitable. I know that these instances of racism, both institutional and direct racism for our students, have caused much physical and emotional harm. And I know that a supportive and inclusive school environment has the potential to protect at-risk students for some of these harms. And I think that all students benefit from the ability to navigate a culturally rich school world in helping them to navigate a culturally rich world that we live in the workplace and higher education and beyond. In fact, DEI initiatives are not separate from academic excellence. They are actually essential in helping our students reach their full potential. I like when I'm explaining to people why DEI is important, this analogy that U of M Chief Diversity Officer Robert Sellers shared. Diversity is where everyone is invited to the party. Equity means everyone has the opportunity to dance, and inclusion means that everyone gets to contribute to the playlist.
Thank you, Lauren. I should have mentioned at the very beginning that I live in the boonies and my internet connection is not always great. So you guys have been breaking up a little bit on me. I may need to stop my video so that you guys can hear me on a regular basis, but I'm going to try to keep it up as much as I can. But if you see me disappear, that's why. Okay, so we are going to go back to Lauren for the next question. Michigan, the state of Michigan, the legislature recently passed a bipartisan educational budget that increased per pupil funding, provided for student mental health and school safety, provided funds for special needs and at-risk students, and funding for infrastructure and a lot more. It's a lot of money that we have not seen for schools in some time. In what ways would you want your district to prioritize some of this funding?
That's a great question, and I'm excited about this opportunity for our students. I often say to my patients in the clinic that everyone should take a course of therapy to help them manage stress in their lives. And so to put my money where my pediatric advice is, I would definitely want to see more mental health professionals, including cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to help our kids navigate the world that they live in. And providing for their emotional health and emotional growth is really important to me. I also think infrastructure is important. So both the physical safety of our schools and making sure that we're up to date with that. As we move through this pandemic, perhaps more investment into air purification systems may be a place that we'd like to see the money spent. I'd like to investigate that. And lastly, I think because we unfortunately are going to have absences of students, I agree with previous candidates that keeping kids in school is paramount. But when kids can't be physically in school, finding, tutors and individualized help to help kids thrive academically and thinking outside the box for additional instruction for those that are struggling with literacy would also be a way that I think we could spend funds wisely.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. McVey, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. I love being asked how we should spend money. It's a great question to have. Recently, we've had ESSER money and American Rescue Plan money, and now this increase in the budget is wonderful. I'd love to argue, just like Dr. Gold, for more mental health professionals in the schools, as well as more nurses. But there's no magical mental health care spigot we can turn to make them suddenly appear. Sadly, and nationwide, this has been a real concern. CBT, cognitive, I'm sure I'm getting it right, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not sure if I've got the first letter right, but it has helped in our household. And I want to thank you for that reminder, Dr. Gold. So assuming we can't get more healthcare professionals in the schools, I'd argue that these funds could be used to develop more support for student success at every level. So more resources in the classroom, smaller class sizes, the development of additional courses, perhaps in foreign language and computer coding, and even better, more attention to the excellent work of our Southwest Washtenaw Consortium for Career and Technical Education, CTE. I'm a huge proponent of enhancing science and mathematics education, STEM courses, and I support our new school bond for funding this. But anything that we could do to lessen that stigma and encourage students to go into CTE programs and careers is a wonderful thing, and more resources would certainly help. As a former special ed teacher, I would also love to see more parapros in the classroom to move students out of self-contained classes and into mainstream classes wherever possible, where they stand a good chance of success with some additional help from someone who can assist with note-taking and organization and things like that. I've seen it work before, and I'd love to see more of it in our schools.
Okay, thank you. I do have a few more prepared questions, but at the moment we're going to open it up to questions from the audience if we have any. Eli, have we got anyone with questions?
No, let me just ask, if you would like to ask a question, would you please use the raised hand feature? It's at the bottom of your screen. So you click on raise hand and you will pop to the top of the screen, and I will then unmute you. You'll be able to ask a question. So I don't see any attendee hands going up. So I suggest
we'll go on with another one.
And if a question occurs to an attendee, please just raise your hand in the course of the discussion. I will notice you, and then we will turn to you next.
Okay. So let's see. How about according to an article in the Washington Post last week, the teacher shortage in America has hit crisis levels. And school officials everywhere are scrambling to ensure that as students return to classrooms, someone will be there to educate them. That's a quote from the Washington Post. Districts across the county are looking for ways to address the problem. Some are moving to 4-day weeks. Some are allowing people to do what people who do not have teaching backgrounds to act as teachers. And others are allowing teachers in training to teach while they are working to attain their credentials. Do you believe that there is a teacher crisis or teacher shortage issue in your district? If so, what do you feel the drivers of this issue are, and what would you do to address the issue? If not, if you don't believe that there is a teacher shortage issue in your district, how would you address the perception of a shortage that seems to be so pervasive? And I think, Michael, we're starting with you.
Thanks. That is a good question. And I heard that same quotation just this morning. One thing I can tell you for sure is I do not believe that lowering the requirements to becoming a teacher is the way forward in any profession. So and of course, as a professor in a teacher education department, I know there's a great deal for new teachers to learn about. In my area, ed tech, educational technology, articles are being released every day explaining the value of careful training, not only in face-to-face settings, but in virtual ones as well. So careful training is important. It's also important to develop what some schools are calling a pipeline of young educators. More funding to help with school debt would be helpful. But we need also to think about ways of retaining those brand new, fresh teachers. More pay, more support in the way of relevant professional development would be good. More opportunities for recognizing teaching at all levels, years of experience, and far more support. I hear from young career teachers who feel like they're constantly under assault by students and do not have the backing of their administration. This doesn't happen all the time, but the times I hear it, are so frustrating. As a young teacher, I absolutely got it. I've been thrown in the deep end a number of times. But let's talk about my own district for a second, our own district, Lauren. We are still a destination district for a lot of teacher applicants. We used to boast of having as many as 60 applicants for a single, let's say, 5th grade teaching position. The number's down these days. I don't know quite how low it is, but other districts are barely managing to keep their schools staffed, is one thing. 2 years ago, I recall the Detroit Public Schools had 170 positions open deep into September. We are not at that position in our district, thank goodness. But whatever we can do as a district to encourage teachers to stay, to retain them, is our efforts. I'm all behind and encourage.
Thank you. Dr. Gold, would you like me to repeat the question?
I got it. Thank you. I concur that I have heard that retirements in 2020 in Saline area schools increased, and that efforts to hire new teachers remains a challenge. I think I would agree with most of what Dr. McVey said in terms of the importance of valuing our teachers, compensating them as the professionals that they are. I would not support having less trained, less professional people teaching our children. I think that became apparent to many of us when we were trying to teach our children from home during the pandemic. I really enjoyed very much taking Ms. Ream's 7th grade science class along with my son. And it gave me, I've always had a lot of respect for teachers as a pediatrician. I consider us working in partnership as professionals in taking care of kids, but watching her in action, even through Zoom, was really wonderful. I've been heartened to see Governor Whitmer come out with the Michigan Future Educator Scholarships that are planning to cover $10,000 for future educators every year, stipends for student teachers, troops to teachers, which will help veterans become educators. That's a great idea, right? But they need the teaching experience. So anything we could do to get people into the teaching profession who are qualified and want to be trained to be teachers, I would support fully. And also just treating our teachers with the respect and compassion that they deserve so richly.
Thank you. Actually, Jennifer, I noticed that Caroline Sanders would like to ask a question. May I unmute her?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Sanders, you should be able to speak.
Oh, I just wanted to be Caroline for this question.
All right.
I would like to know if either of the candidates can speak to whether or not your district has a McKinney-Vento liaison, or whether or not you use the WISD. And if you could share information about the demographics or what you know related to the district.
Caroline,
as you mentioned, DEI.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but before I let the candidates answer the question, would you please explain what you're asking for those of us who aren't familiar?
What I'd like for the candidates to do, either jointly or individually, I'd like them to explain what is McKinney-Vento.
Okay. All right. So I believe, Michael, we're back to you. Is that correct? No, I'm sorry. It's Lauren we're starting with this time.
I have some information about the demographics, if that's what the question is. I am not familiar with McKinney-Vento. I'm sorry. I do know a bit about our demographics, if that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay. So we have approximately 5,000 students. We have about 2% African-American students, almost 4% Latinx students, almost 5% Asian students. And then, about 6% students who identify as being biracial. About 12% of our student body qualifies as economically disadvantaged, and just under 15% identify as being differently abled. And in terms of the WISD, Saline does participate with the WISD. I'm not sure if Ms. Sanders was talking about my familiarity with the WISD or what Saline's. I'd like to clarify that. I am familiar with WISD services, and Saline does participate.
We do take advantage of a lot of those services. Caroline, the McKinney-Vento liaison, I've come across it once, that name, once in the past 6 years, mostly focused in relation to homeless students. I have not heard of that as an issue in the Saline area at this point, although it could very well be. I as the past president of the Washtenaw Association of School Boards, I also had the pleasure of sharing the WISD budget, which has to be approved by every one of the 9 school districts in Washtenaw County. So I do know some of the work they do, but that question, I'd love to hear that addressed more closely by Brian Marcel, the assistant superintendent for finances at WISD. He could probably answer it better. So could Kurt Ellis, our director of human resources. Sorry, can't give you a lot of details, but that was a great breakdown, Lauren. That was bang on. So.
Eli, where are we on time?
Actually, there are 4 minutes left, so I would say it's up to you.
Perfect.
Closing statements.
I think we'll do closing statements. So since we started our opening statements, hold on 1 second. Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I saw something pop up. Now I've lost track. I was going to start our opening statements with Lauren. Was that where we started, Lauren? Remind me. Did you start our opening statements?
I think you did.
Okay. We're going to say you did. So Michael, we will let you start with our closing statements.
Well, just so you know, I absolutely forgot about a closing statement. So mine's going to be very, very brief. Over the last 6 years, I have absolutely enjoyed every moment of my time on the Saline Area Schools Board of Education, every challenging moment and every joyous moment. And there were joyful moments all the time. I've done my part, I believe, to help this district navigate through some very difficult and very challenging times. And I hope the citizens of Saline Area Schools, Saline area, will place their faith in me once again. I'm looking forward to serving another 4-year term, a 4-year term on their behalf and for their children.
Okay. Thank you. And Lauren?
I hope to earn the trust of the voters of Saline Area Schools. At work, I work every day to earn the trust of the kids that I take care of and their parents and families, and I work collaboratively with their teachers. I'm dedicated to taking care of kids physically, but also emotionally, mentally, behaviorally, and educationally. I can partner well with families and with educators in order to reach goals. I'm pragmatic and I'm a problem solver. I'm an active listener and a lifelong learner, and I enjoy most learning about kids. And so I would like to have the opportunity to advocate for students, families, community members, teachers, as a member of the Saline Area Schools Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you very much to both of you. Really appreciate your taking the time to join us this evening. And as I said, for being willing to run for school board. It's not for the faint of heart these days. So thank you very much. We are going to move on to the Chelsea school boards next. Am I correct there, Eli?
That is correct. So
Okay.
Kate Henson is here, and as is Glenn Fox. So
Okay.
if you would please unmute yourselves and turn on your videos, I would say proceed.
Okay. So this time, before we get started, Eli, would you remind the candidates about the cards?
All right, well, they've both been here for most of this session, so this will be the short version.
Just in case.
Yellow, 30 seconds remain. Red, time to wrap it up.
Okay. I just don't want to make the assumption that everybody remembers these things, because I know I never do. So we are going to be talking with Kate and Glenn this evening, both running for Saline School District. And since I messed it up with the first one. I'm going to let you guys explain the terms that you're running for. We are going to start with Glenn this evening. If you would like to spend a couple of minutes introducing yourself and explaining what seat you're running for.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Washtenaw Democrats, participants, and viewers. It's really an honor to be here. It's a privilege to be able to share information about myself and my candidacy with you all. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for that. I also wanted to express my gratitude to Ms. Henson for also being here with us today. I've had the opportunity to run into her on the campaign trail, and I have great admiration for her as a candidate as well. My name is Dr. Glenn Fox, and I am running for one of three 6-year terms for trustee for Chelsea Schools. There is also a partial term that is up for election as well. I am married to Dr. Aditi Fox. She is a dentist at the VA hospital in Ann Arbor, where she serves our veterans. She emigrated here when she was 5 from India. And as a partner, she is a large inspiration for me to run, to be able to serve the community that we both love. We have 2 children. They are young, 9 and 11, and they are the other half of my motivation for running. You know, to have the opportunity to foster the best possible educational environment for them and for other Chelsea students would be amazing. I believe in public education. I am the product of public education. I have over 20 years experience as a professor at a local community college, and I teach in the University of Michigan Medical School in the Division of Anatomical Sciences. And I also direct our anatomical donations program, which is our willed body program. I've successfully worked as part of a diverse team, and I believe in the strength of diverse communities. And I look forward to speaking with you all more about the issues that you want to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate Henson. I am also running for one of the 3 6-year term seats for trustee for Chelsea School Board. I am the director of programs for an organizational development consulting firm. And the flexibility that I had over COVID with that job allowed me to sub at the schools here in Chelsea. And that kind of opened my eyes to some of the struggles that the teachers were going through, the students had. And being a mother myself, I have 2 little ones, and one of them is in elementary school. The other one's working on getting there in a couple of years. But their education is the most important thing to me at this point. And so I decided that this was a good transition. I'll still sub, but to be able to make an impact and to really show some empathy and appreciation for the district for everything that they did for us during the pandemic, I would like to be on the school board so I can help them out.
Okay, we are going to start with some questions that I have for each of you, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience. Lauren, I see that your hand is up. If you would send me a chat if this is something separate from a question, or whether that was just a mistake. Okay, so I'm going to pick from my list of questions here, and we will start with Kate. Kate, the disruption in education across the nation due to COVID has caused many higher educational institutions to either drop ACT, SAT testing as requirements or to make them optional. Long term, do you think that this could and or should lead to a shift in thinking about the value of standardized testing overall?
I think it gives us an interesting opportunity to look at whether or not standardized testing is something that we should maybe keep, get rid of, or modify. I don't know enough to know how that impacted everybody. So it'd be interesting to see that the people who didn't take it that have been in college, how is it going for them? Did it make a difference? Are they still being successful? Maybe it's not something that we get rid of, because standardized testing, it's not just ACT and SAT, it's the NEWA, and some of the other tools that the schools use for baselines. And they're institutionalized. So to break away from that would be really difficult. And I'm not sure if they're at a place where they could do that. But I would be interested in talking to the other members on the board. This is a team effort and they know a lot more about it than I do. So I would just be open to learning more before I was able to make a decision, because that's going to be a pretty big change.
Absolutely. Glenn, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's all right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that it's a fascinating and an important question. You know, in some ways, I'd love to think that standardized testing is going to one day be obsolete. As an educator myself, my focus isn't on assessment, but on learning. Assessment is kind of something that, if it impacts learning, is good, but in order to give a student a grade, that's not why I teach. That's not what I find compelling about my craft. You know, we see that there has been some trend with the graduate record examination. A lot of graduate programs use this, being discarded by graduate schools. And we're seeing some of those graduate schools begin to pivot back towards using the GRE. You know, I think that we can recognize that there are inherent biases within standardized tests such as the SAT and ACT, that socioeconomic groups have various advantages, racial groups have various advantages in standardized testing. But the problem is when you remove it from the equation, the other criteria that you might use are also biased along these same lines. And we're left without an objective measure with which to compare students. You know, I'd like to think that we would be more committed to focusing on issues that would lead to more equitable funding, enhance quality of education for poorer performing schools, instead of focusing so much on standardized education. I always think of that as sort of like going fishing and worrying about how the worm feels about the endeavor. You know, it is a great expense. It is a chunk of time, but it's part of the culture of schools, and I'm not sure that it goes away. I once heard that in Michigan medicine,
We're gonna have to stop you.
I appreciate that. Yep.
Just to be fair, but thank you. I'm going to go back to one of the questions that I asked of the Saline district candidates, simply because I know that there have also been some issues within the Chelsea district along the lines. How will, along the lines of diversity in the school district, so how will you commit to starting or moving forward diversity, equity, and inclusivity work in your school district? And Glenn, we're going to start with you.
Oh, great. Thank you. I love this question. And I feel like I've learned a lot as a Chelsea parent here. At U of M, we have such a focus on DEI, but in Chelsea, we actually have something called DBEI. And the B stands for belonging. You know, I see DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as community goals that we serve through various processes, you know, ways of making sure that everyone has access to resources in an equitable manner. But belonging really is an individual feeling. And so that's a measure of success for how DEI processes are really engaging with our people and if they're working. And so I like to include belonging there. I really appreciate that value. You know, I think that in places where I work, especially at U of M, DEI is such an ingrained value institutionally. It's very well operationalized. You know, there's student support and outreach. There's tremendous, wonderful messaging and opportunities for professional development. There are very excellent training and support for DEI opportunities to enrich hiring practices. And I truly think that the key here for DEI success is in the operationalization. So it's in integrating these values into all of the processes, communicating with stakeholders and demonstrating to them the power of diversity and equity and inclusion so that we can be a stronger community. I love the strength of the Chelsea community. It's very different in different aspects and criteria, but we work together, and I do believe that we are stronger together.
Thank you very much. Kate, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I know that the board is currently trying to revitalize the DE&I committee that they've already set up, and the middle school administration is working on collaborating to get that stuff back online. We have something called the Portrait of a Graduate, and it was an undertaking from the previous superintendent that involved the entire community. This was something that we all came together, we all agreed upon, and there's 3 facets to it, and one of it is social and emotional learning, which this falls under. And I'm excited to see that the new superintendent's going to be bringing this back to life, because everything went into survival mode for a bit. So we're back at a place where we can really focus on some of these really important issues. So I'm definitely going to support that DE&I committee. I think it'd be great if we could revisit some of the goals, reach out to some of the new hires over the last 2 or 3 years just to gain a fresh perspective. But it certainly is a very potent and present issue that the board will focus on.
Okay. I do have some additional questions, but before I move on to any of those, we wanted to make sure that, again, if anybody in the audience has a question, if you would raise your hand and Eli will recognize you so that you can be unmuted and ask your question.
So at this point, no one has yet raised their hand.
Okay.
What I suggest is if during the next question that Jennifer poses, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll notice it, and then that can be the next question.
Okay. So next question, and we'll start with Kate on this one. Masking in school became a highly contentious issue during the height of the pandemic. The numbers of infections have been on the rise again in Washtenaw County, and the CDC is currently recommending that people in Washtenaw County wear masks indoors again. With these developments, there is concern that we may be at a significantly high level again as we enter the new school year, and the recommendation for masks may again become an issue for our schools. How do you feel that your school district should handle the question of masks in classrooms, on school buses, and during school gatherings?
I fully support what the school board did previously. They followed the CDC and the Washtenaw County Health Department guidelines, which is the most current, up-to-date, and safest rules to follow. So whatever the board, whenever the board comes together, if we have to make that decision, those are the things that we'll be utilizing again.
Okay. And Glenn?
I would echo that same sentiment that the Chelsea board behaved so admirably working with administration in bringing students back to school safely and responsibly. And they were following the guidelines of the Washtenaw County Health Department, which was a legal mandate for masking in schools and on public transportation. The mandate can be a purview of the Washtenaw County Health Department, it can be the purview of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, or the schools could decide it themselves. Obviously it's easier if it comes from a county health department based on metrics, but the schools need to be an active partner in this. They need to listen to the experts, the Center for Disease Control, local health departments, the World Health Organization, various healthcare professionals. It's really an interesting phenomenon. I think that it became a hot point of tremendous politicization. I think that the phenomenon itself really has 2 sides to the coin that I find interesting. There's the liberties that, we should be allowed to do this, but on the obverse side of that coin are our duties, right? We did a lot of great things as a community and as a nation, as people, through sacrificing and through caring for the less fortunate and caring for other people. And I don't see how wearing a mask is anything other than a selfless act for helping another person.
Thank you. Eli,
I do see a hand. So Stacy Kind has raised her hand. And because she's a panelist, she can unmute herself and pose a question, if that's okay with you, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Stacy, if you have a question for our candidates, if you would go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I have to say that, you know, as a parent, I don't believe that that the administration believes what is best for their child. I have to have you understand that my son developed a tic from masking, and that it is stopping oxygen to the brain is not at all like, okay, that is a parent's choice. What do you plan to do when parents come at you like that? We all know that what's right. Every kid doesn't wear the size shoe. How do you plan to go about that? Do you not think that parents have the best medical choices for their own children? What do you view? What would you tell a parent that emailed you or whatever that was upset with you that, you know, I don't think that this is healthy for my kid, but, you know, the CDC says it's okay. So how do you answer them on that? You're going to lose people coming to your school, like the decline has been happening, the steady decline.
Stacy, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but do you have a question?
Okay. How do you come at a parent that knows what's best for their kid when you're trying to tell them that it's just a mask? To some people, it's not just a mask. How do you come at a parent that asks you that question? How do you know what's best for their child?
I think all we can do as a board is follow guidance from the people who study viruses and, you know, the doctors who know how the disease is transmitted, and then we can set a blanket policy. If a person has an issue with that policy, then that's a separate matter. And, you know, the board is happy to make, you know, time to speak with you. You've got the administrators that you can talk to as well, but you can't please everybody all the time. So some people will be upset no matter what we decide.
I would agree with Kate on this. You know, I think that the position for which we're running is trustee. And it's very important that we listen to all parents and that we understand the concerns of all stakeholders. But a public school district is held in public trust. And it's the duty of trustees to listen to the experts. And in the case of COVID and masking, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Michigan Health and Human Services, the Washtenaw County Health Department, every hospital in the state, and the preponderance of healthcare professionals and public health professionals all agreed that masking is both safe and an efficacious way of limiting the spread of COVID. I think that now we're at a point where COVID has evolved to be less virulent. We have a variety of different very efficacious vaccines and therapeutics. We're not at the point where our public health infrastructure is breaking. I think that our public health professionals and our healthcare professionals are stretched pretty thin right now due to the COVID crisis. But there is capacity in our hospitals, and we have returned to school in a safe way. And masking now is an autonomous decision. I think that if the public health department, you know, Washtenaw County Health Department or the Michigan Health and Human Services mandate that children wear masks in school as a public trustee, that's something that I would abide by. That's how our society is structured.
Okay. Thank you very much. Eli, am I right that we are about time for wrap up?
I think
Or do we have time for another question?
Mid-19, you have time for another question.
Okay, terrific. Then let's go with, I'm going to ask another question that I asked of the last group, just because I think it'll give you guys a chance to really answer. So Michigan passed a bipartisan education budget that increased per pupil funding, provided for student mental health and school safety, provided funds for special needs and at-risk students, provided funding for infrastructure, and a lot more. In what ways would you want your district to prioritize some of the funding that they will be receiving? And Glenn, I think you were up first.
Wonderful. Thank you for this question. I think that bipartisan push that was signed by Whitmer is just phenomenal as an opportunity for our student and for our state. I'm so excited for it. Chelsea is actually blessed with quite a healthy budget. We have an active sinking fund. We have a series of 3 bonds that we're working through for infrastructure improvement. From my perspective, the number one priority should be on student wellness. There are various types of wellness: physical, emotional, environmental, intellectual, social, etc. And there are consequences from there being a lack of wellness, impacts on physical health, focus, substance abuse, self-harm, all of the things that a school district struggles with for the well-being of its students are attributable to deficits of wellness. And so increasing support for students, more opportunities for children to learn about best practices for well-being. I think beyond that, I think recruitment of very diverse, talented people to act as role models, educators, parapros, administrators. I think that we're seeing a lot of our talent retire, and we really need to recruit people to replenish the ranks of the very good people that have served for so long. Technology for remote learning for students when they're sick, early literacy programs, special education, also an investment in gifted programs. There are a number of very exciting opportunities that we could use to spend this money on. And it's not an additional tax burden. It's already been allocated. So I think it's incumbent upon us to spend it on our children. Thank you.
Okay. Kate.
I echo a lot of what Glenn says. Mental health is right up there at the top of my list. I know that the school already has some things in place. They've started some infrastructure things. They've got some mental health initiatives that are going. But I think certainly adding more funds to anything that helps our children access mental health needs and providing more resources to our special education is really important. We're in desperate need of parapros and special education professionals. So anything for retention and recruiting would also be at the top of my list.
Okay, terrific. So we are going to move on to our closing statements. So each of you will have 2 minutes to wrap up, and anything you'd like to say. I'll wrap up. So Kate, we're going to start with you.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, like you said, running for the school board is contentious these days. It was not necessarily what I thought I was signing up for, but it's more important than ever for me to show my daughters that, hey, we can do hard things. This is important, and it's your future at stake. And my expertise as far as organizational development, building consensus, problem solving, and listening, I think will make me a really great asset to the board. I'm excited to be able to hopefully work with Glenn. He's been a wonderful person to follow as his campaign has gotten off the ground. We have a lot of the same viewpoints. So I'm excited for November to come, and I want to make sure that I am providing all kinds of love and support to the people who gave so much to my kids during a really hard time.
Thank you. Glenn.
I should say, Glenn, you were breaking up a little bit last time. So perhaps lean forward and speak kind of a bit more slowly.
Sure. I think I've been having some internet. I've seen a connection instability. So my apologies. Or on behalf of my internet provider, my apologies.
Glenn, can I ask maybe if you try, and I hate to ask this as of a panelist, but if you try stopping your video for a moment, you were breaking up tremendously. So let's see if we can. Okay.
Is that helpful?
Nope.
No.
I'm so sorry.
We will try to muddle through. Go ahead. Glenn? Oh. You are very garbled, but we can hear you. So
Okay. I'll just go through. Appreciate your patience with me. I believe in kindness. I believe in honest and direct communication. I believe that even successful organizations can grow and improve, and that they must grow and develop. I believe that we need to escape this culture of demonization of people, especially our teachers. I believe that we need to bring back humanity to our communication. I believe that we need to express kindness and empathy to all people, not just those with whom we agree, but to everyone, perhaps especially with those with whom we disagree. I am looking forward to moving forward in this campaign, to serving Chelsea with my experience and my enthusiasm. I'm so glad to be joined by candidates such as Kate and others on this trail in service to our community. Service is what really brings me joy, and to be able to apply my 2 decades of experience as an educator and a higher education administrator to our service, in service of our children and community would be fantastic. If you'd like to learn more about candidacy, you can visit my website at www.foxforchelsea.com. And I would just like to say thank you and best of luck to all of the candidates. May your campaigns bring you joy, bring you success, and may you serve your students and communities very well.
I think Jennifer
thank
may
you,
have.
Glenn.
Okay.
So the next, I'm sorry, Eli, were you speaking? My vehicle.
You froze.
Okay, let's try it this way. Better?
That's better.
Can you?
You're still breaking up a bit. You should speak very slowly. Otherwise, I'm going to say the goodbyes. But you made it all the way, Jennifer. You chose the right moment to have internet connectivity issues.
Okay. The fun of rural internet. This is now the second time my internet has totally dropped out. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Yay. So we had one other potential candidate who was going to be joining us tonight if he could. Eli, I have not seen him join the group. Have you?
I have not. This
Okay.
is from Dexter. So he's still presumably in the Dexter school board meeting. So we're not going to have Dexter tonight.
So for those of you who were waiting to hear from our one Dexter candidate, the Dexter School Board has a very important meeting tonight, and he was going to try to join us if they finished up in time, but it's looking like that is not going to happen. So I think we are going to wrap up. One thing I did want to make sure that we mentioned before we closed tonight, Monday, the 15th, 1 week from today, the Washtenaw County Dems, the Western Washtenaw Dems, the Ann Arbor Dems, all of the Washtenaw County Democratic groups will be holding our endorsement meetings. If you are a candidate running for office and you would like endorsement from us, that is your one opportunity to get it. You should have received an email with information that you should return in terms of your asking for our endorsement. If you have not received that email, would you please reach out to Eli? Is that what that, who would, that was going to you, wasn't it?
No, that would be Chris Savage.
Oh, okay.
I think if you write the Washtenaw County Democratic Party, look on their website. I'm sure they're going to have information about whom to contact.
Okay. Other than that, I think I am done. Eli, did you have any wrap up?
Nothing significant, except I wanted to thank you, Jennifer, for agreeing to serve as moderator. That was very generous of you. And again, Susan Baskett for suggesting this a venture into expanding our panels beyond Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. I think that it was successful. We've met some extremely inspiring candidates tonight. So it's a blessing for the larger community that they're willing to put this kind of effort into helping our children. So I want to close by thanking them. I wish you all a good night. A video will be posted in several days from now. I can't give you an exact date, on the Washtenaw County website. And there, individuals who weren't able to attend this meeting will be able to see it. And I expect, since the election is not until November, that a fair number of individuals will take advantage of that and learn more about the candidates from these panels. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.